No, I'm not sorry. Sure, I was ignorant back then. No question. But ignorance is not a crime. Ignorance is the foundation that we build upon. You can't be sorry for not knowing. You shouldn't be sorry for not knowing. The only real tragedy is to plant a stake in the ground and call the ignorance home. And no, I'm not sorry that I found myself in places I didn't want to be, doing things that weren't me, talking every day with people who didn't fill my cup or push me forward. But it's not the end of the world when we find ourselves walking down the wrong paths with the wrong people. It's just an invitation to step off and find the right one. In fact, the only real wrong path is the one you continue walking down knowing that it's not for you. And no, I'm not sorry. I was half the person I am now. Half as capable, half as knowledgeable, half as driven. But it's not a bad thing to look around and realize that you can be more. It's not a problem to see the reality you're living and deem it beneath your ideals. That's a beautiful thing. What would be a shame is to never open your eyes and see the possibility. To see now as a permanent fixture, not something you can control, but something you're confined to. That would be a shame. Never be sorry for where you came from. Never be sorry for what you went through. Never be sorry for the hell you're walking through now. And most importantly, never feel sorry for yourself, right? These so-called inconveniences are the bridge to something better. They are the reason you will evolve and grow and expand. Don't be sorry. Be grateful. Be ready for the second act. Excited about what will become of you. See, often we have to find ourselves in the lowest of low places before we learn to ask if there's a better view out there for us. That's just the reality. Sometimes life is about touching the hot stove before learning to avoid it. You're never dumb or less than for finding yourself looking up at an ideal. For saying, hey, there's a delta between where I am and where I want to be, and I can obtain that. You know what one of my greatest strengths has become? It's not earlier mornings or quadruple efficiency, not a biohack or a evolved daily routine. It's learning to be kind to myself. And if that seems fluffy or unimportant, I want you to picture someone never running to, but always running from. Always motivated by fear. Endless examples. A mere jog on a summer afternoon was never fast enough. Other content creators, authors, writers, speakers were always better, always further along. Imaginary competition always seemed to move faster, where they were always doing more. I used to call this perpetual state of lack a chip on my shoulder. This is what kept me going, the giant shadow of failure. I can't fail, I can't fail, I can't fail, I won't fail, not me. So I'll do more and I'll push harder. And I'm not sorry about that. In fact, it was probably what I needed for that season of my life. It hardened me up, made me tougher, and I think most importantly brought me to where I am today. A sort of inverse position, learning to be just as motivated from a place of abundance. You can run just as ferociously towards something as you can from something. And guess what? When you reach the finish lines, you actually appreciate them. Running Not away from what I'm fearful of, but towards what lights me up. True story. Every time my YouTube channel hit some sort of subscriber milestone, for years, I'd get a note from a good friend of mine, Dave, who'd say, hey, congrats. Don't forget to celebrate the accomplishment. Every time. And I'd be, grateful for the message. But celebrate, that part I'd kind of overlook. And that's nice, I'd think. But when I started to really understand the importance of that message, I started to see things differently. You have to celebrate. You celebrate because now is the magic. If you can't appreciate now, you will appreciate nothing. Doesn't mean stop, doesn't mean go easier or minimize the destination. It means remember to love the ride because you are, as the saying goes, in the midst of the good old days. Don't wait to be 90 years old to appreciate them. And I'm not, again, sorry that it took me so long to get there. Perhaps that's why I've learned to appreciate this point of view so much. I've seen the inverse. I'm not sorry I spent so much time running away from what I fear and don't want. No, I'm grateful that now I've learned to live in abundance, to run towards what lights me up. Really focusing on each step, finding gratitude in all of it. And of course, it's not always easy, right? There are days where I have to really work to see the value, but when I try, which is the point, I eventually find it. I learned this by stumbling into it. And so in your world, I have a request. Maybe you can frame it as an experiment. What if you completely cut all the sorry stuff? Stopped being sorry for your mistakes. Stop being sorry for the things you aren't happy about or the cosmic injustices you feel have occurred. And what if you started being grateful for the realization that you can change them? You started being appreciative of the fact that you're on your way to something better. Maybe in your context, running from and running to are different. But I'd be willing to bet there's a rearranging that can transform life as you currently know it. And who would have thought, that rearranging is what we come to value most. So don't be sorry about what's occurred or where you are. Be excited. Be grateful. Because life is about to begin. It was an ordinary run, on my ordinary loop, on an ordinary day, right in the middle of an ordinary week. I rounded the last corner that I'd encounter before finally returning back to the street that I lived on. Beautiful sunny afternoon. I remember the sun bouncing off my skin, the sweat dripping down my face. I was looking ahead, not really at anything, more so lost in my thoughts. Then out of nowhere, this little butterfly kind of swooped in, appeared right beside me. And it seemed, as it floated through the air, to link its pace with mine, effortlessly gliding. I looked over at it, and back at the ground, over at it again, back at the ground. And for a second, I wondered what it would be like to be one of those flying machines. The ones built for flight, navigating the sky with no restriction. What a feeling that must be. And as I looked over for a third time, it had slipped back into whatever types of things are important to a butterfly on a warm June day, but realized, as I carried forward, alone again, that for a few seconds we were side by side, it in the air and me on the ground. I hung in there with the flying machines. That's right, the creatures with wings designed specifically for flight. I was for a time amongst them. So what truly separated us? See, my whole life I have drawn lines. Lines that separate them from me. From can and cannot, from possible and impossible. There have been times where I saw reality as pre-packaged. Basically as though you get what you get. Factory, stock, out of the box. It took a long time to see what I wanted, and instead of saying, hey, must be nice, or they have it made, to instead ask, how can I reverse engineer that outcome? What do I need to do now to get what is ultimately available? Because it's very available and it's very real. Just because you are not built like those flying machines doesn't mean you can't run alongside them. Join their ranks. Become one of them. The thing is, instead of drawing walls and building parameters, you have to give yourself permission to adapt and evolve. I was thinking about this the other day, as one of my best friends was sharing some of the work he does with his real estate portfolio. He was talking about some of the lessons learned on social media, and it was met with resentment, disdain. You have X, I don't. You make Y, I don't. You came from Z, I didn't. And I read the comments, I just shook my head and thought, they don't know. They don't know he grew up on a farm in Michigan, spending a long time working for less than minimum wage. They don't know that he put himself through college. They don't know that he took out a loan, having no clue what he was doing, and learned how to renovate a home by himself. See, here's what he didn't do. He didn't point up and say, wow, look how free they are. Must be nice. No, he asked, how do I run alongside them? I am not an observer. I am a flying machine. Because the truth is, we can do so much, become so much, once we've erased the mental lines that we've drawn over the years. Once we give ourselves permission to join that little segment of reality we've deemed to be ideal but have yet to walk towards. Nothing happens to the ordinary moments, the ordinary days or weeks or months, until you realize ordinary is just a label you've been placing on the pathway to extraordinary. Everything you need is there, except your past willingness to walk through it. And today is a new day. You will take to the sky in your own life when you stop drawing lines around everything you want and compartmentalizing it as not for you. And instead, run alongside the life you want as though it was already yours. Life is not a game of those who are and those who aren't. It's a game comprised of those who will and those who won't. Those who see how they can and those who see how they can. You can wish, hope, and watch time fly by, or you can join the ranks of the flying machines that leave all that behind and take to the sky. One of my favorite thinkers, Jim Rohn, he says, life doesn't give us what we need. Life gives us what we deserve. You don't reap the harvest because you need it. You reap the harvest because you deserve it. because you planted in the spring and took care of it in the summer. And oh, what a shift. Right? A hard truth to learn, actually, that the universe doesn't care what you need. It's indifferent to you and your wants. It doesn't care about what you'd like to accomplish or solve. It rewards the question, how can I be more deserving of my ideal life? When you become more personally, your ability to acquire increases proportionally. When you build yourself up, the world conforms. And I remember being frustrated, right? Being in a tough spot and just thinking, why won't the world give me what I need? Right? I'm down and out. I need some type of guidance, of help. Just a break, right? I'm out here struggling. And it turns out the answer was simple. I had to go manufacture some sort of momentum, increase the value that I added to others, improve my skills. I remember, saying, I want $1 million. I want a huge personal brand. And I look back now and it's like, in what world did I think I was entitled to those things? Because I wanted them? That's not the way the world works. I had so much growing to do. There was so much effort that needed to be exhausted before that was possible. Now, you identify as that. Sure, you put the shoes on and you start living like you are that, like you're on that trajectory. You believe that for yourself. But it's understanding that you are creating space for it in your life, chipping away daily. As you grow, the universe listens. And it's not that the world is a bad place or a dark place. The world is a beautiful place. But to get, one must give. And so the question remains, what are you giving to the world, to your community, to your friends and family? What are you giving to yourself? How are you making yourself more deserving of the infinite opportunity outside your front door? It's a question that should be really helpful when it comes to prompting thought, being real, being honest with yourself. And in fact, one of the greatest advantages one can adopt is, instead of pointing out at the world, right, and projecting blame, pointing in at oneself and asking, how can I fix this? What can I do? Right? Every single time. Even when the situation was caused by outside circumstances, beyond your control. Even when it's not your quote-unquote fault. Why? Well, because you are always in control of yourself. And when you adopt this mentality, you learn to take accountability for you, always. You learn not to blame, but adapt. And that is power. Because when it's always someone else's fault, it's never yours to fix. Right? Someone who refuses to even entertain the victim narrative and instead seeks to find the value in a given situation unlocks the roadmap to becoming deserving of the world they want. And that's the control that we forget we have. We have the ability to look around and change things. If we're not happy with them, we can adjust them, but we must first own them. We have the ability to tear down the walls that are boxing us in, to remove the characters in our stories holding us back. When you take action, you're building the life you deserve. When you look around and seek to alter the world as you know it, you're putting yourself in position to receive more from life. It's a simple lesson, but one of the most powerful lessons out there. The ideal life, the things you want, the things you hope for, they're not given to you externally. They are created within and projected out to the world. They start with self-belief and manifest into daily action. Day by day, taking what matters and building it, creating a reality. The world doesn't respond to hopes and dreams, it responds to action. Because To be deserving is not to want. To be deserving is to create. It's to take life in your hands and carve out your own journey. Minute by minute, day by day. What is the difference? When I think back to the first time I deviated from my comfort zone, my routine, I lost the certainty in my life. And as much as I wanted to go back, I remember telling myself one more day, just one more day, until someday became the current day, and that made all the difference. Day one, starting my company, I remember turning the camera on and feeling so lost saying words into a microphone that I almost didn't press record. But I did. Until one day I realized not only was it bearable, it was my purpose. The vehicle that transported my thoughts to the world, and that made all the difference. During the times when some of the projects I invested the most time and energy into flopped, I remember almost saying, this isn't for me. But I kept creating. I kept creating until I found that intersection of what I love and what adds value to the world, and that made all the difference. What's crazy is how small a decision that difference seems in the moment, how insignificant the decision feels as one stands and looks out from their doorway. The difference between going and not going, stepping out or staying in, making the move or waiting one more day. That difference is sometimes disguised in a cloak of triviality, but do not be fooled. The little decision to move forward, to hang on when your ego is screaming at you to just let go, walk away, find some semblance of comfort and predictability. Those decisions to endure in the moments of hardship are what we come to look back on as the turning points that reshaped and redefined life as we know it. The courage required to make the call, release the video, register the business, send the message, reconnect with that loved one, deviate from what your friends are doing. All those things, they may seem small enough now to spend a minute or two thinking about before moving on to our routines and what we are comfortable doing. After all, it's easy to disregard the small things. But the acorn that becomes the oak tree is small. We must, along with the current reality, see the potential in what those things become. And sure, there are times where the present and the ideal are so different that it seems almost incomprehensible. But how do we get there? We get there by making the little decisions that will ultimately make the greatest difference. You are always one decision away from that evolution. So next time you find yourself looking down at the step in front of you, the step you know in your soul is the right step, remind yourself, yes, it sure would be easy to walk away here. It sure would be easy to turn back. Yeah, it's just one tiny step. But in totality, it's exponentially more than that. It's the lifeblood of your new reality. The water to your seed, the oxygen to your lungs, the crossroads in front of you will be, with your permission, the beginning of something larger. than life. It will ultimately be the difference. What goes into your decision making? Particularly the big decisions, the important ones. I heard a quote that moved me from Jeff Bezos. It was a video on Twitter, and he said, "My best decisions in business and in life have been made with heart, intuition, and guts, but not analysis." And he continues, "When you can make a decision with analysis, you should do so, but it turns out that in life, your most important decisions are always made with instinct, intuition, and taste." And that connected some dots for me. Because I think the big decisions, the life-altering decisions, where we are pointing the ship, should be made via intuition. Data can't tell you which direction is most important to you. And even if it could, if your heart's not in it, if it's not aligned with who you are and where you feel you need to be, it wouldn't really matter anyway. Like the most important decisions we make, even right out of the gate, there's this feeling of it's aligned or it isn't. We know right away. We feel it right away. Someone once said to me, if you can't decide if something's good or not, flip a coin. Because you'll know while that coin is in the air which side you want it to land on. And we do. We know. And so after deciding, after letting intuition guide us, then and only then, in my humble opinion, of course, do we calculate the how. That's the analysis part. Once we've committed and our hearts are aligned, yeah, you use the data all around you, the evidence collected along the way to map an efficient path. I think people tend to put the heart and the brain against each other as though they're rivals. I know I certainly have, but I think they need to coexist together. Think about it. If you select your North Star based on analysis, you'll probably lack the drive to get there. And conversely, once decided, if you map the course based solely on heart or feel, you'll be operating blind, limiting your ability to make accurate adjustments based on real-life circumstances. You need both. I'm making some pretty substantial changes here in my life. I'm moving again, this time to Arizona, starting up some new ventures, placing myself in a few situations that weren't even on the radar 6 months ago. I can't explain my rationale using mathematical model. I just know deep in my soul that it's where I need to be. It feels right. It's calling me. The same way 10 years ago, writing speeches in a small Boston apartment for no revenue at the time couldn't be explained. Can't show your work on a decision like that, right? It's just something that feels good. And, once you jump in, then yeah, you start relying on the brain, the analysis to grow and improve and evolve. But I do believe if we made the big decisions based only on the things we could prove or the things we were sure of, the biggest and most important leaps would never have been made. Risks wouldn't be taken. I mean, you don't take risks because you run the numbers and the odds work. You take risks because life is, when you break it down, remove the nuance and details, about the journey. It's about the ride. And so you jump. You commit to a path. And maybe you realize it's not the path for you. Let's say things don't work out. Well, now you are gifted that wisdom, understanding you previously never had. And you can take that all with you onto the next venture. How do you put a price on that? How do you quantify lessons of that magnitude? What data tells you how important that courage was?
We all know the answer. Now, of course, again, data has a story to tell, and numbers don't lie, but they also never tell the whole story. They can't paint the picture in its entirety. Which is why I'd scream from the mountaintops, if it means something to you, it's worth exploration. If it matters, try. If it lights up your curiosity, give it attention. Maybe it doesn't work the way you thought or hoped, but it will lead you to the next thing, and then the next, and the next. It will provide the type of value that simply can't be quantified or even understood in the moment. The story of your life must be written by you. It must align with the person looking back at you in the mirror. That's the litmus test. That's the benchmark. So trust yourself and your intuition to write it. I put on my shoes, stepped outside, and as I made my way down the street for my midday run, I felt the wind at my back, tailwind. My first thought, well, nice, this is convenient. Especially running along the beach where it can be pretty windy. It's definitely a luxury to have wind at your back. Sure enough, my mind went, oh, but that leaves me a headwind when I turn around and come back up the coast. My mind started to wander. I started imagining what it was going to be like turning around at that 6.6 mile mark. I was doing a half marathon that day and knew that, the way back would require that I level up. And every once in a while, the thought popped into my head, sort of reminding me of the inevitable. And sure enough, the moment arrived. The sun pressing down onto my skin, the humidity wrapped around me like a blanket. I hit 6.6 miles, turned around on A1A, and there was that headwind. But the first thing I noticed was not the force pushing back against me. No, in that moment, I felt the breeze, the coolness. It was refreshing. And there, underneath it all, was my light bulb moment. What we are presented with day in and day out is a question. It's a choice. Would the wind become my adversary? Something that, pushed me forward on the way down, but then held me back on the way up? Or would it be what pushed me forward on the way down and then cooled me off as I made my way up? And if you think that mental alteration or perspective shift is just nuance or too small to matter, I suggest you give it a go when you're doing whatever your equivalent of total exertion is. Whatever your mental stressor is that pushes you beyond your state of usual comfort. When you're in the middle of, let's call it, hurt, whether it be physical activity or a personal situation entirely unrelated to athletics, how are you internalizing the world around you? It's become clear to me over time that winning during our most trying moments comes down to mental shifts so small that they seem almost laughable in normal conditions. But your mind will always stop you before life will. So why not put yourself in a position to win? Everything around you is trying to help you in some capacity. Allow that to be the case. Remember that what you look for, you'll find. So if you look for resistance and obstacles and adversaries, they'll be everywhere. But if you look for and seek out value, you'll see that you are surrounded by nothing but value. Even those metaphorical headwinds become hands reaching out, working to cool you off as you make your way to greater things. So understand that when they arise, those headwinds, the ones that typically hold you back, they hide within them small wins. Small wins that will be the difference. The deeper one descends into chaos, the more important it is to find those victories, the ones hidden in plain view, the ones that look to many like problems. But you'll know. You'll know just how malleable this world around us is. The world seems to provide not definitives, but tools. So which will you pick up? What will you build with them? See, life is never happening to you. It's happening for you. So keep your eyes open, keep your feet moving, and remember that you will win, not despite the headwinds of life, but because of them. Because you've trained yourself when those around you see can't and won't, to find a way, to pull from the chaos the very thing you need most. Life gives you the canvas, but you are the one who must paint.